Okay, look, I know it's been a while, right? I know I have totally been neglecting you guys, but things have been really busy at work. I am one of those jobs that actually picked up with the COVID epidemic and everything, pandemic. I'm trying to game as much as I can, as allowable in my state with small groups and what have you, but anyway, I'm here. I'm here for you guys, and I apologize because in the background you may be hearing my son watching his favorite YouTube channel about board game reviews. And I'm not going to tell him to turn it off because actually it's a really good channel. But listen, speaking of YouTube and game reviews, here we are. Let's talk about the worst, most technically inept game review channel on the internet, and that's Bland Gaming. Tonight we're going to talk about Tales from the Loop. So if you've ever watched any of my videos before, you know I gush about Free League. I love Free League. Free League is, I love their Mutant Year Zero engine. I love their writing, and they're just, you know, it's funny. They started out, they're this little role-playing company in Sweden, and I've been playing role-playing games since the 70s because I'm old. And they have just really gotten me in my old age back into it. I have a lot of career-oriented adult friends, and we are loving the Free League titles. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk about Tales from the Loop. There's a lot of bias that I have towards Tales from the Loop because it takes place in the 80s. And you're playing in this game, I believe it's 10 to 15-year-olds. You're playing middle schoolers or junior high people in the 80s, which was what my age was. So this game here just completely ensnared me. I was just like, oh my goodness, yes, I have to take this. I have to check this out and what have you. But before we start, let's talk about our drink for the evening here. Everyone except for my dim-witted teenager are all in bed. So it's old-fashioned night. The drink for the evening is old-fashioned. I make mine with Buffalo Trace, bourbon, and a little bit of cherry in there. It's good stuff. It's my favorite mixed drink of all time. So cheers. Here's to the 80s. Okay, we're drinking to the 80s tonight. Okay, so again, my marketing wife is telling me to keep these short. So let's keep this short and sweet. What is Tales from the Loop? Okay. So Tales from the Loop, it takes place in an alternate 1980s. And in this 1980s, there's advances in robotics, and then there's also advances in what's called magnetron drives. And the players in this game are 10 to 15-year-old kids. And this game, it can be as goofy as the Goonies, or it can be as serious as Super 8, or, you know, this is Stranger Things, the role-playing game. And I will talk about the origins of this game because it's somewhat controversial about where to draw your inspiration from when you're running Tales from the Loop. I can tell you about what worked for my group and everything. So there are two settings in Tales from the Loop. In the sense that you can have it take place in Sweden, or you can have it take place in Las Vegas, Nevada. But the rules are flexible enough to go ahead and you can have it take place in anywhere. For instance, my group is not from Boise, but we actually decided for our scenario to take place near Boise because it had the access to things like shopping malls and civilization that we liked, and then also it has 4 seasons. We definitely wanted an American loop, but we did not like the fact that in Las Vegas it's just perpetual summer and desert and everything. We wanted the 4 seasons because we were very inspired by the snow artwork and everything, which is worth saying that this is inspired by Simon Stålenhag and everything. His book of Tales from the Loop that he did an art book, which was so good. It was so well written that it inspired a role-playing game here. So this is a map of the Swedish setting, which is very cool. If you don't mind setting it in Sweden, I'll tell you what, the writing is so cool and it's very interesting. But me and my group being Americans, we decided, well, we wanted it to take place in America. So, all right, so we got the fact here. We established the fact that it's based off of some retro art by Simon Stålenhag, and then we also established the fact that you're playing kids. So what's the whole deal? What is the loop? Well, okay, so what the whole setting is about is that there is this scientific, it's an installation that is in Sweden here, and I think it's called they call it the loop. And basically what it is it's this big, it's actually portrayed on the cover here. And it is this facility that's down there where they do all sorts of secret squirrel government type of all types of experiments and very strange tech, things like that. And the kids all live in this little sleepy town that's outside of the loop. And so this facility here does all sorts of scientific work, and a lot of the parents and whatnot will work at the loop, but the entire town is centered around the loop because the economy is centered around it. And then you've got these big giant exhaust towers that come up. That's a very normal part of life. There's a really cool part where, like, every day at like 6 p.m. these towers make a big emitting, like a boom, as the exhausts are going off and what have you. So the cool part, the story arc, is all of the techno weirdness that happens from the loop. And what the loop is it's actually like a particle accelerator, which is they're working on trying to make a teleporter there. And because they're working on this, and the second facility being in Las Vegas, Nevada, the idea is that they're both trying to create like a teleporter kind of thing. And because they're kind of messing with the science that they're not supposed to mess with, all sorts of calamity starts happening and these mysteries occur. And basically what it is the kids go out to solve the mysteries and what have you. The book itself has incredible, even though this is written by a bunch of Swedish guys and I'm an American guy, the reference to the 80s is just amazing. And that is a huge part of this game, is the 80s nostalgia. And for me and my friends, because we're older, we absolutely loved it. Like, I think 3 of my 5 players in the adventure that we played, they actually played themselves. They made themselves, and a few of them didn't even change their names. They had their real parents' names and what have you. So the other big part of the loop is the advancement in robotics. So robots are something that are fairly normal, and thinking robots are brand new here in this alternate timeline. The other thing too is the magnetine drives. Okay, right now there's a whole, as you can see, there's a whole separate section on the loop that's taking place, and as you can see, there's this amazing artwork. And if you've ever watched any of my videos before, you know how much I love artwork. So the magnetine drives are something that's very big with the big giant airships and what have you. So in the game itself, the kids cannot, the child characters, they cannot die. So they can suffer from conditions, but the way around that for you GMs out there, if you wanted to create a darker setting, which was something that I did, is that the loved ones and friends can die. So looking at the archetypes here, you have the bookworm, the computer geek, the hick, the jock. It's so funny because this is a Swedish game. The jock is a hockey player and everything, and the American one, our stereotype, is definitely American football. Popular kid, the rocker. Now, these archetypes are basic enough to where you can make them really work for you. So for instance, we had one character that was, she calls herself an orch dork, where she's like an orchestra kid and everything. But because she likes music and things like that, she used the rocker archetype, but she's really more of the nerdy orchestra musician type of character and what have you. So anyway, then with the game here itself, the system is, if you're familiar with the Year Zero engine, it's very simple. You will use you'll have a basic statistic, and then you'll have a secondary skill, and you're rolling that many dice, and you're looking for sixes for successes. I'm not going to get too deep into the mechanics here, but like the other type of Year Zero games, there's certain ways that you can re-roll your dice and what have you. So anyway, the thing that's very different, I think, about this game, which really makes it simple, is that when you run into trouble, you're making like a single test. So you're not like testing to cause damage or hit points or anything like that. It's more so you're testing to hide from the big giant robot, and then you'd make one roll in order to resolve the encounter there itself, or at least a part of the encounter. It was very synonymous with, if you've ever played Mice and Mystics, about how they resolve encounters and whatnot. And then your character will always have a special item. It can be anything. It can be a hockey stick. It can be a skateboard. One of the characters in my group, she actually had like a violin that she would carry with her, and you can use that to give you bonus dice as long as you can explain in a role-playing effect of how it affects you, how it affects a certain situation. Like she used it at one point to help create a distraction, and it fit perfectly in the story arc and what have you. So anyway, the mysteries themselves are, they're based in scientific wonder. And I think if I had to choose an inspiration for the story arcs, I look at like Super 8. And that is one of my all-time favorite movies, because Super 8, it just hits, it resonates with me, because it reminds me of my childhood. A lot of the posters and stuff that he has up in his room, that main character, I very much had when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, my very first scenario that I ever ran for Tales from the Loop was a kind of a love child of... It was inspired by Super 8, and then inspired by another, of all things, it was a Call of Cthulhu adventure called The Happy Family. I will talk about that in a different video for you GMs out there, and I'll talk about what I did with that story arc, because I would love to share it, and I think it'd be a hoot to hear other people run it. But anyhow, so the mystery gives out clues. The kids, I really want to go ahead... As you can see, it's just complete, beautiful book. Guns are, you do have weapons, and you have things that will help, the tools and what have you, that will help the kids in their adventures and everything. But really, what it is it's about situational awareness, and it's about using... thinking your way out of situations. Rather than looking at your character sheet for the solution, you kind of look in the story arc and everything. And like most of Free League games, it's very story driven. And again, the character portraits are great. The book itself has a number of these very small, very short scenarios, which are absolutely great. And then it has a campaign called The 4 Seasons of Mad Science. Like all Free League books, it completely changes the face of the setting. So the other thing I really liked, just robots are cool. This is like this android type of thing here. And robots are very normal. They're around there, but they've got definitely that 80s feel. So this magnetrine technology is another thing that's very... I have to stop and talk about that, because what it is it's like everything that's north of the northern hemisphere. They've created this kind of anti-grav technology where things can hover up. So these are almost like cargo ships that are flying around and moving slowly through the atmosphere, and that would be something that the kids would always see in the background in their throughout their normal lives. The other thing too is that conflict is a huge part of the game, in the sense that you also have two sets of conflict going on. So you'll have the adventure and the mystery that the children are going through, but then the kids are also experiencing conflict at home. One of the cornerstones of the game is that you're not going to walk out your door and go out and have adventures and have go run out with your friends and whatnot. if you have a really stable, fun, and stable home life. So turbulence in the home life is a very there's a big emphasis on it in this game, and it actually really works for the game. So a lot of my players wound up they wound up actually making their trauma being something that they experienced in their childhood, whether one was the death of their parents. Another player had a alcoholic father. Another player had parents that would not pay attention, very rich parents, but they didn't pay attention to him. They just threw money at him, and they ignored him and what have you. So you can see the artwork's just terrific. I love these creepy robot looks. Just very cool. And the character portraits are just top notch. So, anyway, so it's got an, maybe I'm thumbing through the campaign portion here, and I hope I'm not giving too much of spoilers and everything, but I really want to show you the amazing cartography and wonderful art that's in it. So you have everything that you need, and this won a bunch of awards. You have everything you need to run Tales from the Loop from just this book here. And I used a mix of technical, like sci-fi type sounding music that was very 80s popish. And then I used actual 80s music to describe the scenes when the kids are out riding their bikes and whatnot. And my group loved it. They thought it was absolutely great. The GM screen is a magnificent addition. If you've watched my videos before, you know I'm a huge fan of the GM screen. This is a very, very rules light system. And everything that you could possibly need is right here on this GM screen. And like all of Free League titles, they have this gorgeous, very ambient artwork that's sitting here on the back. I did buy this is our friends the Machines. This is a adventure pack. We haven't run anything out of this yet. I've been making up my own stories. Okay, so now let's get into the controversial conversation here, and I got about 3 minutes before I want to end the video here. Where should you draw your inspiration from when you're doing your campaigns? Okay, this is the deal. You really should look at Stranger Things, and you should look at Super 8, and you should look at this book, the Tales from the Loop. This is the original art book, which has nothing to do with the role-playing game other than the fact that it is the actual inspiration for it. The stories are very well written. The artwork, it's all kind of these strange sci-fi landscapes in this alternate 80s, and there's always kids, or just kind of, it's a mix of regular life with this science fiction type of background to it, and it really just captures it and pulls you in, especially, like I said, if you're a child of the 80s like me, it'll pull you right in. Great book. And just even looking at the art, I always put this book in the center of the table whenever I GM, because looking at the artwork just gets my players all inspired and pulls them into the setting. That being said, I believe it was, is it Amazon or Netflix, released a Tales from the Loop miniseries. Now, whether or not that is a good TV show is an entirely separate conversation. And I learned from a Canadian guy that sells granola bars online that some people are very, very, very passionate about that TV show. I will say this, that the TV show's pace, it might be consistent with this book, but it is not a good source of inspiration for the game. There's just not, it moves too slow, there's just not enough action in it, so it's not a good inspiration for the role-playing game. Now, again, is it a great show? Maybe it's your cup of tea, and maybe that's the thing. But for me personally, I was very much, again, my inspiration, I drew on I drew on Super 8. I can't emphasize that enough. That is the number one type of feel that I like when I'm running my Tales from the Loop campaigns. And then I also drew from the Stranger Things setting. I thought that was really very good and had the same kind of feel. I like the darker story arcs. So you can certainly, these are designed where you can certainly do something lighthearted. But I like darker, scarier, much creepier themes and everything. Not completely, not Call of Cthulhu or Vaesen, but much more, again, much more dark, like Super 8, where there's real danger, there's real fright, and what have you. That's really where my inspiration comes from. So, should you buy Tales from the Loop? I think you should. It is a very different role-playing experience. I will tell you that it is not for everyone. When I brought this book out to my regular role-playing group, I had 1 or 2 people that said, nah, it's not my bag, baby, and they just ducked out. So, but the people that did sit there and the people that did play this, and with me running this, we absolutely loved it. There's a sequel to the game that comes out, and it covers the high school age in the 90s, and it is called Things from the Flood. And what happens after Tales from the Loop is there's a problem at the facility here, and they wind up closing the facility down, and they wind up flooding it with water as a containment procedure. And yet there's still all sorts of weirdness and funkiness that comes out of the Tales from the Flood, which creates plenty of calamity for the kids to go ahead and get involved in. I have not purchased that one yet, not because I do not have a desire, but because I literally have Free League titles, books that are sitting on my shelf that I still haven't even read yet. I also have to think about budget and whatnot, and it's kind of one of those things where my wife says to me, before you buy any new toys, make sure you play and read the toys that you've already had. So I do plan on picking up Things from the Flood. I have not picked it up yet. I'm a bigger fan of the 80s than I am of the 90s. Let's be honest, the 80s was like the greatest decade ever. So it's going to be very hard to top this. But I do know the big difference between Things from the Flood and this game is in this game the kids can't die. They can get fatigued, they can get conditions and things like that that affect their ability to play the game and their ability to pass skill checks and things like that, but they never die. In Things from the Flood, that changes. The high school kids can actually die, and the story tones go a little bit darker in the published stuff. I run my stuff extra dark and creepy anyway because I love the scariness to it and everything. So listen, should you get Tales from the Loop? Absolutely. You should pick it up. It's a lot of fun. If you like Stranger Things, if you like... I don't think it gets as goofy as some of the films like E.T. or like Goonies. I don't think that's a good reference, and I've heard those used to describe this, and I don't think this gets as goofy as that. I think it's got still a fairly serious tone, and you can take it as light or as dark as you like. Like for instance, of all things, I was watching It Chapter 1, and just the interaction between the kids and everything really was reminiscent to me of Tales from the Loop. It reminded me a lot of Tales from the Loop, and you could easily construct that into a story about, instead of a clown, it could be a rogue artificial intelligence that's been released on the town. It's very easy to convert. So anyway, yeah, check out Tales from the Loop. I really highly recommend it. I know you can get this stuff on the website, and I think this stuff is, I think the main book is actually running pretty cheap right now. So it's a great game. It's a beer and chips game. It's very light, but very heavy and deep on story. So check it out. If you've played it, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Tell me about your experiences with Tales from the Loop. And also, I'm really anxious to hear your experience if any veteran players have played the Things from the Flood. If you've played Things from the Flood, please share some of your really great stories about Things from the Flood in the comments here. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching the most boring internet channel out there. I'm going to finish my old-fashioned, and then I have to work tomorrow, so I'm going to go ahead and go to bed. So good night all, and thanks again for watching.